Welcome back to Celestial Scrolls, where ancient Chinese myths and legends come alive through storytelling. Today, we continue our epic journey with Chapter 34 of Journey to the West, the Mountains of Celestial Resonance. In our previous episode, Tang Sanzang and his disciples learned profound lessons from the Plane of 10,000 Communities, discovering that wisdom emerges not only from mystical experiences, but from ordinary people living lives of conscious service and authentic presence. Now they face mountains composed entirely of crystallized light, where their accumulated earthly wisdom will be tested against celestial understanding. This chapter explores the delicate balance between human and divine wisdom, as our heroes discover that true enlightenment requires not the abandonment of earthly knowledge, but its harmonious integration with heavenly insight. You'll witness spectacular encounters with celestial beings who challenge everything our travelers think they know about the nature of spiritual achievement. If you've been following our heroes through their increasingly profound transformations, you won't want to miss this climactic encounter between mortal wisdom and immortal truth. Hit subscribe and the notification bell to continue this legendary quest. Now let's ascend into the mountains of celestial resonance. Dawn broke over the plain of 10,000 communities with unusual splendor, as if the very air had been charged with anticipation. Tang Sanzang and his disciples woke to find their simple camp surrounded by representatives from dozens of villages, each bearing small gifts, not of material value, but tokens of gratitude and connection. A young girl from the village of Threaded Stories presented Tang Sanzang with a small cloth woven with intricate patterns that seemed to shift and change as he looked at them. Grandmother Silk says, "This will help you remember that all wisdom is connected," she explained shyly. From the village of Flowing Wells came a crystal vial containing water that seemed to glow with inner light. Elder Chen says this water will always remind you of the source, the bearer explained to Sha Wu Jing, who accepted it with deep gratitude. The community of Peaceful Bridges offered Wukong a small bronze mirror, perfectly polished, but no larger than his palm. Master Wei says true reflection comes not from size, but from clarity, they told him. Finally, the village of Simple Presence gave Bajie what appeared to be an ordinary riverstone, smooth and unremarkable. For remembering that the most profound truths often wear the simplest forms, they said with gentle smiles. As the travelers prepared to continue their journey, the representatives gradually dispersed, but not before forming a large circle around the camp. Together, they began to hum, not a song with words, but a harmonious sound that seemed to emerge from the earth itself. The humming grew in complexity and beauty until it resonated with the very air around them. A blessing, Tang Sanzang realized, his staff beginning to vibrate in harmony with the collective sound. They are sending us forward with the combined good wishes of the entire plain. As the humming reached its crescendo, something remarkable happened. The sound began to reflect back from the crystalline mountains ahead, creating a dialogue between earth and heaven. The mountains, which had appeared solid and remote from a distance, began to sing in response, their crystallized light pulsing in rhythm with the community's blessing. When the humming finally faded, the mountains ahead had transformed. What had seemed like an insurmountable barrier now showed clear paths of light ascending through the crystal formations, as if the blessing of the 10,000 communities had opened a way forward. The travelers said their farewells and began the ascent, each carrying their gifted token and the memory of the community's blessing. The path of light beneath their feet felt solid, yet somehow alive, responding to their steps with gentle chimes that harmonized with the ongoing resonance from the crystalline peaks above. As they climbed higher, the nature of the mountains became more apparent. These were not ordinary stone formations, but crystallized moments of divine understanding, each facet containing preserved insights from countless celestial revelations. Looking into the crystal surfaces, they could glimpse fragments of cosmic wisdom, the birth of stars, the dance of planets, the flowing patterns of energy that connected all existence. "We're climbing through a library of heavenly knowledge," Tang Sanzang observed, studying the way light refracted through the crystal walls around them. His staff's characters had begun to resonate more strongly, creating harmonics with the mountain's natural frequencies. "But it's not just a passive repository," Wukong noted, watching how the crystals seemed to respond to their presence. "The mountain is alive, aware. It's evaluating us." Indeed, as they continued their ascent, the path began to present challenges that tested not their physical abilities, but their integration of all the wisdom they had accumulated. The way forward sometimes required them to demonstrate understanding gained in the forest of competing convictions by navigating passages where multiple crystal paths existed simultaneously. Other sections demanded the memory work they had learned, crossing the ocean of collective memory, requiring them to recall and apply lessons from every community they had visited. The first major test came at a plateau roughly halfway up the mountain, where the path of light divided into 4 distinct routes, each leading to a different peak. Unlike their earlier trials, this seemed to require separation. Each path was clearly designed for a single traveler. Another test of individual growth? Baji wondered, studying the crystalline formations that marked each path's beginning. "Not growth," Tang Sanzang corrected, his understanding deepened by their recent experiences. "Integration. Each path is designed to help us synthesize everything we've learned with our authentic natures. We must go separately, but we carry each other's wisdom with us." The path marked for Tang Sanzang led to a peak that pulsed with golden light, the color of teaching and wisdom transmission. As he began his solitary ascent, the crystals around him began to sing with voices that sounded remarkably like all the teachers he had ever encountered, both mortal and divine. But these voices did not offer new teachings. Instead, they asked questions. How will you ensure that the wisdom you carry serves all beings, rather than merely satisfying your own spiritual aspirations? What is the difference between knowledge that impresses and knowledge that transforms? When you return to the world below, how will you speak so that both the learned and the simple can understand? Each question required Tang Sanzang to draw upon not just his scholarly training, but his experiences with the communities of the plain, his revelations in the pavilion of mirrors, and his growing understanding of his companions' unique forms of wisdom. The ascent became a process of synthesis, weaving together all his accumulated understanding into a unified vision of enlightened teaching. Wukong's path led to a peak crowned with silver light, the color of protective action and skillful intervention. As he climbed, The mountain challenged him with scenarios that required him to apply his catalytic nature in increasingly subtle ways. He faced situations where obvious action would cause harm, where restraint served better than force, where inspiring others to find their own solutions proved more effective than solving problems for them. The crystalline voices surrounding him spoke in the tones of all those he had protected. When does protection become limitation? How do you inspire without overwhelming? What is the difference between strength that dominates and strength that empowers? Wukong found himself drawing upon lessons learned from the peaceful mediators, the patient farmers, and even his own experience of authentic self-discovery to answer these challenges. His understanding of his role as a catalyst deepened and refined as he climbed. Baji's path wound toward a peak glowing with warm, earthen light, the color of contentment and integration. His mountain challenged him to demonstrate his understanding of the balance between spiritual aspiration and material appreciation. He encountered crystal formations that tested his ability to find satisfaction without attachment, to enjoy pleasures without being enslaved by them, to serve others while maintaining healthy self-care. The voices he heard belonged to all those who had struggled with desire and found wisdom through experience. How do you honor the body while transcending its limitations? What is the difference between contentment and complacency? When does spiritual practice become another form of indulgence? Drawing upon the wisdom of the simple villagers who had mastered presence, the insights of his mirror pavilion experience, and his growing understanding of his place in the cosmic order, Bajie climbed steadily toward his own form of integration. Sha Wujing's path led to a peak radiating deep blue light, the color of steadfast service and foundational support. His mountain tested his understanding of the difference between service that empowers and service that enables, between loyalty that supports growth and loyalty that prevents necessary change. The crystal voices around him spoke with the tones of all those who had served with wisdom. When does helping become hindering? How do you support others' growth without taking responsibility for their choices? What is the difference between humility and self-negation? Sha Wujing found that his climb required him to draw upon every lesson about authentic selfhood, community wisdom, and the recognition of his own foundational strength to answer these profound questions about the nature of enlightened service. As each traveler reached their respective peak, they discovered something unexpected. Rather than finding themselves isolated on separate mountaintops, they emerged into a vast crystal amphitheater that connected all four peaks, a space that existed somehow both at the top of each individual path and in the shared center of their collective journey. In this amphitheater waited four figures of indescribable beauty and presence, celestial beings whose forms seemed to shift between human and cosmic, individual and universal. These were not the harsh judges or demanding taskmasters that folklore often described, but beings of infinite compassion whose very presence inspired rather than intimidated. "Welcome, travelers of the earthward path," spoke the first figure, whose voice contained harmonics that resonated with every crystal in the mountain. "We are the guardians of this threshold between mortal understanding and cosmic wisdom." "You have climbed far," said the second, "not just in distance but in understanding. You carry within you now the integrated wisdom of many realms and many beings." The third figure gestured toward crystalline formations that displayed images of their entire journey, from their earliest adventures to their recent discoveries on the plain. But the question remains, what will you do with this wisdom? How will it serve the greater good? The fourth figure smiled with infinite gentleness. This is not a test to pass or fail, but a recognition to receive. You have each become bridges between different forms of understanding. The question is whether you choose to accept this responsibility. Tang Sanzang stepped forward, his staff now blazing with light that harmonized perfectly with the crystal amphitheater. We accept whatever responsibility our understanding brings, but we are still students, still learning. How can we serve as bridges when we have not yet reached our destination? The first celestial being laughed, a sound like crystal bells touched by gentle wind. Your destination is not a place, but a state of being. You have been arriving at it gradually through every step of your journey. The Western paradise you seek is not separate from the path you walk, but revealed through walking it with consciousness and compassion. The scriptures you seek to retrieve, added the second being, are not texts written on paper, but understanding written in the heart through experience and service. The third being gestured toward their packs, where their simple belongings began to glow with the same light as the mountain crystals. You already carry what you came to find. The question is whether you recognize it. The fourth being spoke with infinite tenderness. Every community you have served, every challenge you have faced, every moment of authentic self-discovery, these have been writing the true scriptures within you. You are now living texts of wisdom, each containing teachings that can benefit countless beings. As these words settled into their understanding, the travelers felt a profound shift. The knowledge and experiences they had accumulated were no longer separate memories, but had become integrated into their very essence. They were the same beings who had begun this journey, yet they had been transformed into something new, living embodiments of the wisdom they had sought. But our journey westward, Wukong began, his understanding still grappling with this revelation, continues, the first celestial being assured him. But now you travel not seeking wisdom, but sharing it, not as students, but as teachers, not as seekers, but as bridges between the mortal and divine understanding. The crystal amphitheater began to fill with gentle light, and within that light they could see visions of their path forward, not the linear westward journey they had imagined, but a flowering pattern that would take them to countless communities, realms, and beings who could benefit from their integrated understanding. The 10,000 communities blessed your ascent, observed the second being. Now you carry that blessing forward to 10,000 more communities that await your service. Your journey to retrieve the scriptures has become a journey to deliver the scriptures, added the third, though they are written not on silk or paper, but in the living example of beings who have integrated wisdom with compassion. The fourth being stepped forward, offering each traveler a small crystal that seemed to contain starlight. These will help you remember this moment when the challenges of service make you doubt your readiness. You are ready not because you have achieved perfection, but because you have learned to grow through imperfection. As they accepted the crystals, Tang Sanzang and his disciples felt the weight of responsibility settle upon them not as a burden, but as a gift. They had sought to become worthy of receiving divine wisdom, only to discover that they had been preparing to become vessels for sharing it. The path down from the mountains appeared before them, not the single route they had climbed, but a multitude of pathways leading in all directions, each one radiating light that called to different forms of service and teaching. Choose your path, the celestial beings said in unison, but know that all paths lead to the same destination, the gradual enlightenment of all beings through the patient sharing of wisdom gained through authentic experience. As they prepared to descend, Tang Sanzang looked back at the crystal amphitheater one final time. We came seeking the Buddha's teachings in the Western paradise, he reflected. Instead, we have found that we must become the Buddha's teachings wherever we go. Perhaps, suggested Wukong with a grin that contained both his old mischief and his new wisdom. That was always the point. Together, they chose a path that seemed to lead toward a region where the light was dim, not because it lacked potential, but because it awaited the illumination that conscious beings could bring to it. Their true journey westward was beginning. And that concludes Chapter 34. Tang Sanzang and his disciples have experienced a profound transformation in the mountains of celestial resonance, discovering that they have become the very scriptures they set out to find. Now they face the true nature of their westward journey, not seeking wisdom, but sharing it as living embodiments of integrated understanding. If you enjoyed this climactic revelation about the true nature of their quest, please hit that like button and share your thoughts in the comments below. How do you think this transformation will change their adventures going forward? What does it mean to become a living scripture rather than simply studying written ones? Subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss Chapter 35, where our transformed heroes will begin their new mission of service, carrying their integrated wisdom to communities that await their unique forms of teaching. Here at Celestial Scrolls, we're committed to bringing these profound tales of spiritual transformation and service to life, one chapter at a time. Thank you so much for joining us on this journey through the landscape of celestial wisdom and divine recognition. I'll see you next time as we continue with our heroes in their new roles as bridges between mortal and divine understanding.